Welcome, listeners, to an early Friday morning edition of the New Standard. I want to thank Neal for hopping on with me where we can jump on this early Friday morning. And we wanted to do this because the news is hot and heavy with the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. And I think it's just appropriate that we bring it to you as fast as we can. And also, before we hop into the program, I want to make sure everybody goes to the channel, the New Standard on YouTube. Give us a subscribe and a like. And also, the show is available on all podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. So make sure you help us out with that, and make sure you're subscribing to the programs and doing all that good stuff. Let's jump right into it because we have limited time. Let's jump into the retirement of Vince Williams. Speak to that real quick, Neal. And the timing feels interesting to me. And how do you think it'll impact the Pittsburgh Steelers, particularly at that inside linebacker position? Who starts and what does the depth look like now that Vince Williams is no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler?
Yeah, I think first off, I want to acknowledge Vince Williams' story. I don't think people quite understand what he overcame to be in a position to retire before training camp in 2021. He was a 6th-round draft pick out of Florida State, basically a two-down linebacker, which is a position that really doesn't exist in the NFL anymore. It was on its way out in 2013 when he got drafted, but it's really non-existent today. You have to be able to defend the pass to play linebacker in the NFL, and that was not something Vince Williams could do when he first came in. You might recall, too, Lance, week 1 of the 2013 season, by the third quarter, the Steelers had lost Maurkice Pouncey for the season and Larry Foote for the season. The talent of those two players aside, they're both quality players for sure. Those positions were probably the least deep on a team that was probably going to fight to get to a 9-7 mark that year. 2013, they were kind of transitioning. Williams was not even active in week 1. I forget who it was, one of those other low-end linebackers. They activated him to play on special teams mostly. They really counted on Foote to play basically every snap. Foote went down. I forget who it was. Maybe somebody out there would remember. He filled in the rest of week 1. Vince Williams started in week 2. Vince Williams was on the bubble as far as even making the team. And they put him out there. He was lost. I mean, really, you felt bad for him. He was having to do a lot. The team needed him to do a lot. He did the best job that he could, and he really wasn't all that good. But he stuck with it, and he continued to improve. He continued to develop. And I think that the thing that we saw from Vince Williams, who was the old school, hard-nosed, badass linebacker type, and the thing that we saw from him was really kind of a look inside to his personality. People saw his vulnerability. He was open about that in social media. And he became a beloved member of this team, mostly because he was really the long shot on a team that got pretty good as Williams continued to contribute to it. For Vince Williams to be a surprising retirement, for him to be a kind of a nostalgic look back on a career, for fans to be reaching out to him and saying they're really happy for him and they're congratulations on the great career. It speaks volumes not only of the fan base of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but everything that Vince Williams did that was really against the odds. And you see players like that come through, and those are the kinds of guys I'm always rooting for. I spoke to Vince Williams often in the locker room. He's a different guy. He really is not exactly what you would think of in a lot of different ways. But what you saw from him in social media is really who he was. He did not put on airs about the type of guy that he was. The team will miss him for sure. And I just as a fan and as somebody working in the media, you appreciated Vince Williams. You really enjoyed what he brought to the team. And I really hope that he does well with whatever he's planning on doing in his life. That said, what they're going to do, Robert Spillane obviously is the next man up. I think Buddy Johnson's a guy you and I have talked about, Lance. I was big on him coming in. I think it really just kind of expands the role for him a little bit. And it's funny because Johnson, a 5th-round draft pick, right? He was the one who went in the 5th, or was he
I
one
think
of the
so.
6th? 5th or
I think
6th,
so.
whatever. Basically, he's another Vince Williams. You look at a guy that's lower end, but Buddy Johnson is the exact opposite player of Vince Williams. It just goes to show how much evolution has gone into the position. Johnson's half Williams' size. Williams is a big dude. First off, he's the size of one of the outside linebackers. If Johnson can pick that up, and Johnson's a really smart player. He's quick. He's athletic. He's more of your modern linebacker. If he can pick up what they're doing, I think there's room for him to build. I think he was a guy they would have counted on for this kind of role next year. So maybe they got to bump that timeline up a little bit. I don't think that's a bad thing. But let's remember the Steelers cut Williams. They didn't want to pay him what they were scheduled to pay him, and then they brought him back. So obviously they felt there was some value in bringing in keeping Williams, and he had to have been figured as a guy that was going to contribute quite a bit. So I think that's challenge number one right out of the gate. I think that Mike Tomlin and Keith Butler have some things they need to work on to kind of figure out what they're going to do with whatever we're going to see as their base defense this year. But perhaps more than anything, what different packages are they going to put together below the base now? What kind of sub-package combinations are they going to use? Because they've got to get deeper guys onto the field. And I think that's the football season, and I'm sure Mike's going to talk about that today. I'd imagine it's going to come up and he's going to say something to that effect. Your cliche next man up, but it creates the opportunity to do something different, perhaps than what they had specifically planned to, and that sometimes can be the best innovation for a team.
What I'll say about Vince Williams and being a guy from the North Side and being a guy from Manchester 15233, we appreciate aggression and we appreciate violence. And that's not to say that, my neighborhood is full of violent individuals, but we appreciate the fair share of violence that comes with playing the inside linebacker position in Pittsburgh. And point of correction for both of us, Buddy Johnson, I believe, was the 4th-round draft pick.
4th round, excuse me.
Out of Texas A&M. We appreciate violence. We appreciate hitting and physicality that comes with playing inside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So my neighborhood, I've always been a fan of Vidi Vici. I love the approach. I love the grown man business, BI, that he brought to the position every time he fielded it. And I love those type of stories where guys get every ounce of everything out of their talent. They get every ounce out of it. So I love the physicality. I love the character that he brought to the field. I love the physicality. I love the violence. And I thought he did get better in terms of defending the pass. I thought he improved in that skill set over the years. It was definitely, I think, a weakness. It remained a weakness, but it was something that I think he improved on where he could stay above water. Want to point out this comment from Steelers Freak, and thank you, Steelers Freak, and thank you for everyone who hopped on this morning. He said he felt that Vince couldn't carry the wood anymore. Coaches had his number and couldn't defend the pass. That is my concern. The Steelers don't have 2 good inside linebackers. My question is for you: why the timing? Like, why right before camp? Could he have made this decision possibly earlier? Does that impact the Steelers any more than it does now because he made it at camp? It just seemed interesting that the decision came right before training camp.
My guess, and I have nothing to back this on, just past experience. My guess is he had some type of lingering issue or some type of physical concern going into it. We don't know that. We probably won't know that. That's not the kind of thing you're going to report, especially not on a well-respected veteran. You're going to let him retire. The timing of it, and considering he signed a contract, I think he worked out. I think it came to the eve of camp and it was like, I just can't do it. I've thought about it. Things have changed. And you got to respect a man for that. It's Mike Tomlin's job to figure out what to do without Vince Williams. That this, come on, let's be fair. This isn't TJ Watt. I mean, it's an obstacle they should be able to overcome. And if they can't, well, they probably have much bigger problems anyway. it's not the best thing that could have happened to them, but it's something they're going to have to overcome. Getting to your point though about violence, I love that, and you're right. It's not neighborhood violence or anything like that. It's football is a violent game. I know that that's not the most in thing to say nowadays, but the reality is it's a violent game. And you might recall there was a great piece that came out from a national reporter last year, a pretty in-depth interview with Vince Williams, and you see how old school his approach is, and you see how much the physicality of the game drew him to it, and he was good at it. Vince, you might remember this too. The first 5 games of last year, I think Vince Williams had a tackle for loss in the opening series of each of those games. He was in the backfield. The defense, the way that it was structured last year, was perfect for Vince Williams. It did not the base defense. It didn't ask him to do much in terms of coverage. And really his thing was they're going to open up gaps up front. You attack your gap and get in the backfield and get somebody. And Williams, I thought, did that very well. I thought last year might have been his best year. It's tough. It's just I loved watching the guy play. I love what he brought each and every week. And I sincerely hope that he's able to do, what, whatever it is that he wants to do. And he's earned a good living for he and his family. I hope that they can do really well based on the success that he's had. A stat that was in the press release the Steelers sent out, Vince Williams played in more games than all but 10 players that were drafted with him in 2013. And he was the only one drafted in the 6th round or later. That's a remarkable statistic. Considering how long ago 2013 was, how much the game has changed, and what we, as fans and observers and media, what we saw of Vince Williams at the beginning of his career to the end of it, it's remarkable how much he improved. It really was. He was a solid player for the last 4 or 5 seasons. And all due respect to him, he was kind of a dog right away. They had to move Troy Polamalu down to the box pretty much full time on passing downs because of Williams' presence. And the team took a long time to recover in 2013. But Williams is the kind of guy you should root for as a fan, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They'll miss him.
Let me jump into this last comment from Steelers Freak. And he said they need 2 3-down inside linebackers so O's can't go hurry up and not allow for scheme changes. ILB and passing D has hurt the Steelers, and it showed in the playoffs. Speaking to the depth and how it impacts the depth, what about UG3? I mean, Steeler Nation has been very high. You know how we get when we see these players like UG3, these physical freaks, and we immediately make these comparisons to Shazier and so on and so forth. Where does UG3 stand in terms of being a sub-package player or a depth player, a guy that can provide some value outside of special teams for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Where does he stand going into this camp? Is this make it or break it? Will we ever see some of the potential, the physical potential that UG3 has show up on the football field? Just where is he at as a player?
He's got to stay healthy. That's kind of been the rap on him, isn't it? I mean, a lot of the issues they had at linebacker were due to the fact that he was banged up quite a bit. And some of that could be a combination of inexperience and him not really being all that big of a guy. So we've seen a bunch, if it's not a Vince Williams type, with the Steelers going lower than their starting inside linebackers. It's usually the tackling machine kind of guy, undrafted, usually from a small school, typically around the MAC conference, like UG3 was. I'm trying to remember where Spillane went off the top of my head, but it's something like that. Tyler Medikevich was a guy they drafted to play that role. He was a 7th round pick. He's still in the league. UG3 can be that type of guy, which is really just kind of a year-to-year thing. I don't think there's a whole lot about his game that should make you think that they're set at the position. They just drafted the position in the 4th round after trading up to draft the position 2 years ago. I don't think they're necessarily counting on a guy like UG3 to step in and be a high-end contributor. But if he's there, I mean, they're keeping him around for a reason. They're putting him on the field when he's healthy for a reason. You have to, going with the same theme of the guys that put the work in and improve over time. He will have the opportunity to do that. He's going to have to show that in camp. But let's see. I think this Williams departure really opens up a lot of things for a lot of people. So get out there and see it. I mean, for me and other real football dorks that don't really think the preseason's a bad thing, I enjoy watching those second half snaps. I enjoy seeing the guys that can get out there and play. It's a very stripped down version of the game. I understand that. We all want to see, Big Ben chucking 60-yard bombs to Chase Claypool or whoever the star receiver is going to be.
Because Ben's in the best shape of his life.
Of course. It's July. He's in the best shape of his life, better than he was last year. I enjoy seeing players like that get the opportunity to show what they can do and speculate on whether or not they might be able to hang on and grab a roster spot. I like that. He's that guy, though. I don't know if you can guarantee he's on the team. I think the practice squads of this year's team will be even more competitive than they've ever been, largely because teams are going to be able to bring up 2 guys from the practice squad this year for game day rosters. That really, that 54th and 55th spot on the roster this year are going to be functional players. They're going to be brought in for a reason. So those types of guys you look at for special teams contributions, perhaps more than anything else. But I think Gilbert, UG3, I think has the opportunity to earn playing time, and from that, really just try to earn his way on. We're going to see that in the preseason.
I want to say what's up to Marcus J. He wrote, "Man, what you guys doing up right now? Good morning. I woke up feeling dangerous, and I'm in the best shape of my life because it's July."
It's training camp.
Yes, it's
Love
camp.
it.
I feel in the best shape of my life. I want to transition to the signing of Melvin Ingram, and I take it from your comments that from a depth perspective, the loss of Vince Williams is significant, but from an overall defensive perspective, in terms of what you think this defense will be, it's not a big loss. No disrespect to Vince Williams. Let's shift into the big move that the Steelers made this week. That was the signing of Melvin Ingram. And let me briefly break into some statistics for Melvin Ingram. And if you guys aren't familiar with Melvin Ingram, I'm sure you guys are. He was the guy that played next to in San Diego when he played next to Joey Bosa. Outstanding. I think he was outstanding in that role as a secondary linebacker. 49 sacks coming out of San Diego. Was pretty banged up last year. So you saw some of his production drop from 2017. He had 10.5 sacks. 7 sacks in 18, 7 sacks in 19. And in 2020, he did not have a sack, played 7 games, but he was largely banged up. The first question I want to ask you in terms of the signing is, why did the Steelers sign Melvin Ingram? What do you think his role will be with the Steelers? And how do you think that will impact the depth chart?
I think you sign Melvin Ingram because it's rare that you get a productive pass rusher at $4 million a year, not on a rookie contract. They didn't have to draft him. They just pay him that salary for the year. Melvin Ingram's a damn good player. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Health has been the concern with him, and it's understandable. But you're going to pay $4 million to see if he can play the majority of 17 games. Here's the thing: defensive football, it's won and lost up front. Your front 7 is really going to be the strength of your team. I understand the value of coverage, but nothing helps coverage the way a pass rush does. And I think the Steelers have proved that over the last couple of years. When everyone thinks that their coverage issues have been solved, it's like, all right, well, they lead the league in sacks every year. It's not a coincidence. One plays off the other. They're going to need their pass rush even more than they ever have over the last 5-6 seasons. Melvin Ingram can be a guy that can come in. You listed off all of his yearly stats. That's fine. I'm not worried about that. What I'm talking about is on a per snap basis, the havoc that he brings. He's not necessarily a sack number guy, but he's a pressure guy. His pressure numbers are through the roof. He gets to the quarterback. He disrupts things. These are things that don't show up in the obvious statistics all the time. Getting to the quarterback to alter a throw, rushing a quarterback through his rhythm and making him throw off balance, getting him outside the pocket where he might not be as good, and buying another second and a half for your coverage to catch up. Ingram can bring that. Now, the best value, I think, for Ingram is he's an A to C gap guy. You can play him up, you can play him down, you can play him around the defensive line. He doesn't need to be a nose
Stand up.
tackle.
Yeah.
He can stand up over the nose and he can attack the A gap. He can rush off the edge. He can stand up off the edge. He can go down into wide 9 and get to the quarterback. There are a lot of things they can do with him. And his value is not simply he's going to replace Alex Highsmith. No. There's a lot of things they're going to do with him. He's going to come in and play a lot of different roles, which isn't all that dissimilar to Bud Dupree. He did a lot of that as well.
Is this an indictment on Hightower?
Not at all. Not at all. It's not okay. So the Steelers defense, seemingly by mandate, have played their outside linebackers 80-85% of snaps. I don't think they need to do that. I don't think it's required that they do that. And I also think that, well, you know what? You've got a hole at inside linebacker. You know, we've seen that. I'm not saying that Melvin Ingram can play inside linebacker. I'm saying that if Devin Bush is also healthy, you can put him on the field and Ingram can be kind of a spy over the A gap. He can control the quarterback by his movement. He can attack the line of scrimmage, push the quarterback back, and in that play an inside linebacker position without having the liability of athleticism, which Williams did and Spillane does. So there are different things that you can do to mitigate weaknesses that you have on your team. Again, it's not as simple as just, Alex Highsmith's off the field when Ingram's on it. They're not interchangeable. They're not going to do that. He can replace Watt for a play. He can replace Highsmith. Right. He can go inside for a big nickel package if you want to do that. There are a lot of different things you can do when you have talent in your front seven. And keep in mind, when you've got Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt as bookend pieces, there's a lot of different things that you can do. And there's value to that for the Steelers this year.
We always talk about on this show payment. We talk about pedigree, we talk about performance, and we talk about pay. When you look at pay, it's a 1-year deal. You said about $4 million. So that scratches a bucket there. He's relatively cheap for the player that he has been. And you talk about pedigree. He's a former first-round draft pick. And you talk about production. The combination of Bosa and Ingram, when they were rolling, that was a dynamic pass rushing duo, one of the best in the National Football League. He was a compliment to Bosa, and they wreaked havoc. And if you ever watched them play together, they used to just get downright busy and nasty. He's a very talented player. So he checks the 3 Ps, payment, pay, pedigree. He checks them all. And if you can get him on a 1 year, which falls into the sexy tanking mantra that we've talked about, it's perfect. Now, in terms of packages, I'll throw another P out there with packages. Who are the starting 4 linebackers in the base package?
You're going to see Watt, and I don't know. I think you've invested in Highsmith. The Steelers model with their outside linebackers recently has been snaps. Watt played every snap preseason through the regular season his rookie year. Highsmith is in a position to do something similar to that. I think it's going to be Highsmith. I think you can use Ingram situationally. I think you can build a defense that doesn't have to rely on his presence somewhere, and you can still get him 25, 30 plus snaps a game. So those two, and then Bush, I'm assuming Bush is healthy. It sounds like he's not going on the PUP list. He finished his conditioning test. He's all good there. And then probably Spillane. Just knowing his experience within the defense, the team is kind of used to him being out there. I don't know how often we can say Spillane and Highsmith are going to get 80% plus of the snaps. I think there are a lot of different things that they can do. I think those are kind of your front 7 targets as far as bringing on sub package guys. They're going to look for guys that can play in the secondary. They've got 2 good safeties. They've got some questionable depth at cornerback and a lot of guys that are going to need, probably some snaps to differentiate one from another. With that, I think you can experiment with some dime packages, things like that are going to kind of target getting Spillane off the field and maybe getting Ingram on to do things along with the defensive back. So there are a lot of different things that they can do. Those are going to be their 4 base guys, but I don't think you're going to see Spillane and Highsmith playing 80% of snaps in every game. It's going to wax and wane. Some games it'll be 50, some games it'll be 70, somewhere in there.
Just real quick before we get out of here, who do you think will be the nickel backers when they go to nickel?
Antoine Brooks has been the guy that I kind of thought they drafted to play that role. They kept him last year with injury, which is really kind of the NFL's way of saying we're redshirting him. Whether or not he was going to be out for the season, he was going to miss some time, but they weren't going to use a roster spot on him. So they put him through waivers and brought him back on the IR. They don't often do that with late draft picks. So there's obviously something there that they value. And they've been trying to establish that safety / cornerback or even linebacker hybrid sub-package kind of player for years. I think Brooks is going to be the guy that they want to look for that. At the same time, I don't think they're afraid to use James Pierre. I think he's a player that they feel confident with. I'll be honest. Everyone and their brother has told me up and down how great James Pierre is. They figured that out with 27 NFL snaps. Good on them for doing it. I'm not sure you really can say that, though. I just know that Mike Tomlin's talked about him. Not something he would do if it was a player that he did not expect to do anything at all. It'll be interesting to see what they do. You got to keep in mind, too, defense in the NFL is not as constructed in black and white as probably most of your offensive packages are going to be. You use a lot of different guys. There are a lot of different values that everybody brings in different situations, and you got to defend, as Mike would say, every blade of grass on the field. So there are a lot of different packages that you can use. I don't think they're going to say flat out that this is the nickelback come hell or high water. I think they're going to use a lot of different guys in a lot of different ways.
And it's always a good thing in football to have enough bodies. You just got to have bodies to deal with any situation that you're dealing with and be flexible and rotate those guys in and out. Before we get out of here, I want to thank everybody for jumping onto the program early morning. Thank you, Marcus J., for jumping up. I felt physical and dangerous, and I felt like I was in the best shape of my life going into training camp. So I wanted to hop on this morning and do it. Before we get out of here, there was a tweet that you talked about that you wrote earlier this week, and I'm throwing you on the spot about I think it was transactions or something about rumors and transactions and what might happen, A, B, or C, or it was something about, I think, Nelson coming back, something going on there. Any rumors floating around about Steven Nelson coming back?
I would think above anything else, and it's a talking point, less than a rumor, but not completely unsubstantiated either. I would think a team like the Steelers, where they are, I wouldn't be surprised if they were going to look into signing a veteran cornerback or acquiring a veteran cornerback in some way. I say that because they do that every year around this time. Maybe not every year, literally, but Kevin Colbert loves a bargain in the secondary. They love bringing in the Ross Cockrells, the Cody Sensabaughs, players like that, Bryce McCain, players like that they can get on sub-veteran contracts, something light, not a whole lot of money. They're not at the top end of the veteran exception yet. Somebody they could pay. I'm not going to put a dollar figure on it, but get something of a bargain of a player that can contribute to your depth. Nelson probably, in my opinion, doesn't fit that. I think Nelson's going to get $4 or $5 million, something like that. Somebody's going to sign him. He's good. It was a financial issue why he was released to begin with. I get that fans hate him and they're going to scream and yell, whatever. Nobody hated him before all that stuff came up. They thought he was the greatest. It was a weird release, but he had the right contract to release. In my opinion, I said this in the offseason, they're going to do something, either extend or release something with the contracts of Joe Hayden or Steven Nelson. One of them was not going to go through this season on their current deal. Nelson's made as much sense as Hayden's does, I guess. Either way, they're each of them had 1 year left. Each of them cost roughly $8 million. It's cap space that they needed. Bringing Nelson back at a substantially lower amount, I don't think it's a bad move for either side. Nelson, in his case, he sees a cornerback market that's giving players that are at best on his level $13 million a year. Cincinnati signed Trey Waynes to a $60 million deal over 5 years, 4 years, something like that. Three for 45, I think it was. These are contracts that Nelson can compete with in a normal market. All right. It wasn't a normal market in March at all. If he can get a year in to put some film down, he can compete in that space for that kind of money. I think he wants to do that. He's going to need the opportunity to do it. Could he get that in Pittsburgh? I think so. I think there's a spot for a player of his talent there. Will that happen? I doubt it. I mean, it just doesn't look right probably for either side to do it. But the Steelers, Vince Williams is an example of a player that they released and brought back for less money. It's just as much a question of the player wanting to do that than it is the team. I think the team could find value in it. I think he can go for more than what the Steelers probably would be willing to pay. And I think the Steelers would bring in a younger player, somebody that they would have a chance to maybe keep beyond this season, and that wouldn't be Steven Nelson.
Yeah, I would love for him to bring him back. I think that would rectify, I think, this an issue in their secondary in terms of who will be their nickel player, who will be their nickel corner. Before we get out of here, Neal, speak to anything that you guys got coming up on Steelers Wire as camp starts.
Plenty of training camp stuff. We're going to go over each position. We're going to kind of talk out the way we see things going down. But more than anything, we just want to focus on what we can expect from the team as a whole this season. You're always ready for the injuries. Those are going to come leading up, straight to, I guess more than anything, I just want to make sure fans are excited. They should be excited. I love this time of the year. I love the beginning of training camp. I love the preseason. It's a game in 2 weeks, Lance. I mean, how exciting is that? I love that. It really doesn't feel like the offseason really started.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't
here we
feel
are,
like that. Yeah,
back in the Hall of Fame game, the cursed field at Canton, after what's going to be an absolutely epic Hall of Fame weekend for the Steelers. It'll be great to see them play. As of now, I don't know. I've got other stuff that I kind of need to do this time of the year. I don't get to travel as much, but considering how much Steelers presence there is, I might go. We'll see.
Hey, you can send me if you want.
Go for it. Yeah.
I'll gladly send me a ticket. I'll gladly go there and be a journalist, AKA in air quotes.
Be a journalist.
And be a journalist. But with that, listeners, we're going to conclude the show. I want to thank you for hopping on last minute, Neal, in the morning. Big up to everybody that joined us on the live chat. And as always, as camp opens, I want to close the show with the following line, as I always do. Please tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe, and go Steelers.